Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a couple things to discuss. We've got a couple of PTO updates to talk about. We've got a couple of injury updates to talk about. We've also got a couple of retirements. Could the Ottawa Senators be facing punishment for the Evgeny Dadonov situation? And we also got a couple of trade rumors involving the Anaheim Ducks, Calgary Flames, and Florida Panthers. So I'm going to go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before I start this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe down below. We are so close to 200 subscribers. We're only 18 away, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe down below. We are so close to 200 subscribers. I'll never be able to do this without all of your guys' support, so thanks you, and just don't forget to subscribe. Now, before I get into the real big news pieces of this video, I just want to touch on a very sad story that happened over the weekend. And not an NHL game, but over in England, there was a very scary incident over in the English Hockey League as former NHLer Adam Johnston, who played a few games with the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think in the 1919-1920 season. He used to be an NHL player. He then played in the AHL. He's been bouncing around over different leagues over the past couple of years. He was playing in the English Ice Hockey League this year, and it was a very scary incident. I did have the unfortunate pleasure of watching the video. Adam Johnston took a skate blade to the throat. It did not look really good. There was complete silence in the crowd as soon as it happened, and eventually Adam Johnston did wind up dying. So that's really, really sad news to see. You never want to see anything like that. I think it was just a freak accident. I don't think there was any intent to injure or intent to do anything like that. Some people say that maybe he tried to kick him. I don't think so. I think it was just a freak accident. It was really, really sad to see. Really bad stuff. You hate to see that. So I just want to send my condolences to all of Adam Johnston's friends and family. Adam Johnston looked like he was continuing to play hockey. He never got a real solid look at the NHL level, so playing in other leagues, you just hate to see that. So that sparked a lot of conversations about having neck guards be a mandate for players to wear. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens after that. But that's just a really freak accident that has a really, really unfortunate toll. So hopefully we never see something like this again. It was really, really bad, really gruesome. I don't recommend you watch the video, but definitely I just want to send my condolences to Adam Johnston and his family and friends, and rest in peace, Adam Johnston. So really bad stuff to see there, not something you want to see, and hopefully something like this never happens again. But going over to the regular news pieces of the video, we got a couple of retirements to talk about here today. These players have both been away from the NHL from the past little while, so not overly surprised that these guys have announced their retirements. I'm surprised why I did it right now, but Thomas Plekanec and Joe Thornton have both announced their retirements. Thornton, longtime San Jose Shark, drafted by the Boston Bruins. Thornton's been a really, really great player during his career. He has been a longtime San Jose Shark, was a huge point producer with them. I think he's played a whole bunch, over 1,000 games. He's done fantastic in the NHL. He started a career with the Boston Bruins, was traded to San Jose, played a majority of his career in San Jose. He did have short stints in, I think, Florida and Toronto as well. So definitely, he played in a lot of games. I think he's been out of the league in the past 2 seasons, so he hasn't really played much. So he's officially announced his retirement, so not overly surprised there. Thornton's really in those older age of I think it was 42 or 43 right now, so I wouldn't expect him to make a comeback, so not overly surprised he retired, but he had a long, great career. I don't think he ever won a Stanley Cup, but he did have a very long, huge career, and I think he's been one of the more successful players in the NHL, and a lot of people do think that when he's eligible, he will be a very good Hall of Famer. So going to be interesting to see, but wish you all the best in retirement for Joe Thornton. Same thing for Thomas Plekanec. He's been away from the NHL for the past 4 or 5 seasons. He's a long-time Montreal Canadian, had a short stint with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he was never going to make a comeback either, so he's also retired from the NHL. So good to see that these two veterans have officially retired. Thornton, I expect to be a Hall of Famer eventually. He's a very fantastic player. Plekanec looks like was a really good Canadian, and I definitely think that he was a really liked Canadian as well during his time in Montreal. So definitely really good stuff there to see Plekanec and Thornton retire, as both are now officially retired, and they're going to remain away from the NHL game now. So also going over to a suspension we had over the past little while, Connor Clifton was suspended 2 games for a hit to the head. This happened during the Friday game between the Buffalo Sabres and New Jersey Devils. Connor Clifton hit Nico Hischier up high in the head area. It was a really not an overly great hit. Hischier's currently out with an injury right now, so that probably played into a reason why he got a 2-game suspension. I thought it was a pretty bad hit. I'm not sure if it was 2 games or 1 game. I was expecting it to be probably a 1-game suspension. I'm a tiny bit shocked it was a 2-game suspension, but I think it was definitely deserved, and Clifton was going to miss the next 2 games. Now he's already missed the first one. It was that Sunday game against Colorado. He'll miss 1 more game, and then he'll be eligible to return, but definitely not a great hit. I think it was definitely worth the suspension, so not overly great stuff there from Connor Clifton. Then we also have a couple of PTO updates I want to talk about here today. Danton Heinen, who was one of the guys who we said was still on a PTO, wound up signing his new NHL contract with the Boston Bruins. After the Boston Bruins moved down Ian Mitchell, made have a few roster moves to clear up some cap space, they signed him to a 1-year, 2-way, $775,000 deal. So really good stuff there. Heinen's a solid bomb 6 forward. He's been playing the past couple of years in Pittsburgh. He does have some familiarity with Boston and Anaheim. He's played there in the past before too. The past 2 years he played in Pittsburgh. Put up 33 points in 76 games 2 years ago. Put up 22 points in 65 games last year. So he's looked really, really good over the past couple of years. His best seasons, though, did come in Boston. 17-18 season, he had 47 points. And in the 18-19 season, he had 34 points with Boston. So he's going to a place where he has a lot of familiarity playing. He's probably got a lower role than he did in the past with Boston, as sort of like a 4th-line forward, maybe 3rd-line forward. But still, this is a really good signing for Boston. It gives them some more bomb 6 help. That's a really, really big win for Boston. I know it's not huge, but he can basically be a really good replacement for some of their guys who they lost via waivers, like AJ Guerrero, or someone they lost in free agency, like Garnet Hathaway. I think Heinen could be a fantastic fit with Boston. So really good stuff there. Good to see Heinen turn his PTO into an NHL contract. That's fantastic news. Really great to see. Like I said, I think Heinen could be a good, solid 3rd, 4th-line forward. Put up like maybe 10 goals, maybe 25 points, and be a really good productive bomb 6 forward. So he already gone to his first game of NHL action against the Florida Panthers, was a +1, didn't have any points. So definitely, I think he's going to fit in really well with Boston. I think this was a really good PTO signing by the Bruins to get another good bomb 6 forward. So that's a fantastic move in my opinion for the Boston Bruins. On top of that, one of the other guys who was on a PTO, and Austin Wagner, who was in a PTO with the Pittsburgh Penguins, has been released off his PTO. So Wagner will not be joining the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. Wagner is a decent sort of like spare forward, maybe AHL forward, and the Penguins really don't have that much cap space to work with right now, so I'm not overly surprised Wagner didn't get a PTO out of the contract. So he's going to go and look for employment elsewhere. And then we only have 2 PTO updates left. There's only 2 PTO players left. Mark Pysyk, who's currently injured, is still not been signed or let go by the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Brett Ritchie, who is on a PTO with the Florida Panthers, still has not been let go or signed to an NHL contract. So we're going to have to wait and see on those 2, but at least we have some more updates on the PTO updates, as we got Heinen signing with Boston, and we have Wagner now gone from the Pittsburgh Penguins, so it'll be interesting to see. But those are your PTO updates. We do have a couple of injury updates from around the NHL. Caden Gooley was cleared to play and return to game action for the Montreal Canadiens. Eric Comrie's lower body injury, which we talked about in our last video, has now been updated to week. So Comrie's going to be out for the next little while, so that's not overly great news for Buffalo. Jake McCabe has a groin injury and is out day for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Nico Hischier, as we talked about, has an upper body injury, most likely a concussion of some sorts. He's going to be out day right now, so not great news for Hischier and not great news for McCabe. Both those guys are pretty big pieces for the Leafs and the Devils, so hopefully not for a over a long period of time. Charlie Lindgren returned to game action for the Washington Capitals. Roman Schmidt, who was a player who was placed on season opening injury reserve for the Tampa Bay Lightning, he's been cleared to play, so he's been sent back down to the minors. Connor McDavid was able to return to game action for the Heritage Classic, so good to see that McDavid is back for the Edmonton Oilers. That was a huge boost for them. Matthias Janmark, though, has a shoulder injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time, so that's not overly great news for the Edmonton Oilers. Matthew Benning and Mikael Granlund were both cleared to play, so the San Jose Sharks got a couple of veterans back for that game against the Washington Capitals, so that was good to see. Timothy Liljegren has been cleared to play by the Toronto Maple Leafs, so good to see that he's gone back to game action. Mike Matheson was cleared to play after suffering an injury earlier in the week, so good to see he was back. Jack Finley, who was another Bolts player placed in season opening injury reserve, was cleared to play, so he was back in the game action. John Gibson has upper body injury. Matt Grzelcyk has upper body injury. Sam Bennett, who was cleared to play earlier in the day, got re-injured. He's had a lower body injury. All 3 are going to be out for an unknown period of time, so really bad blows for the Ducks with Gibson, Bruins with Grzelcyk, and Bennett with Florida, as all of them wound up leaving the games yesterday. Ty Dellandre got back into game action for the Dallas Stars. Erica Branson got back into game action for Columbus Blue Jackets yesterday. So good to see it. Those two guys are back in the game action. And on top of all of those guys, Cody Glass's lower body injury has been updated. He's going to be out now week to week. And Zach Benson has a lower body injury as well. He's going to be out week to week. So not really great news there for the Sabres or Predators, as they lose some pretty big pieces for the next little while. So going to be interesting to see, but that's the injury update there from all of those teams. Most of these guys are getting back to play or are out for a day period of time right now. But losing Benson for a couple of weeks, losing Glass for a couple of weeks, losing Comrie for a couple of weeks. All really bad injuries there for those teams, and hopefully the Sabres and the Preds can overcome those sort of injuries and continue to do really well to begin the season. So good injury updates there for most of the NHL, but really bad injury updates there from the Preds and the Sabres players, and hopefully they can recover in the not-too-distant future. Before we get to the trade rumors here, I want to discuss a quick piece of news that was discussed by Elliot Friedman on the Saturday headlines, as well as on the recent 32 Thoughts podcast. That's going to be a really interesting situation to watch this week, and that's Evgeny Dadonov. Now, back 2 years ago in the offseason, the Ottawa Senators moved Vegas, Evgeny Dadonov, for one draft pick to sort of take Dadonov off their books. He was not fitting in overly well with Ottawa. Vegas wanted another scoring forward, so that was a huge move there for the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights, throughout that season, would then get into a huge cap mess. So with all their players trying to get back into game action, they would try and trade Evgeny Dadonov to the Anaheim Ducks for a trade package. I know I was doing my blog when I was doing this. I was covering that. It was a really interesting situation to watch out, because at first it looked like it was a good deal, but then Evgeny Dadonov said that he had a trade protection in place that prevented him from being traded from Anaheim. It was later found out that he did have trade protection that blocked him from being traded to Anaheim, but Vegas thought that he did not have any trade protection. And according to some reports, it sounds like Ottawa told Vegas that Dadonov never submitted his trade protection list, and that basically means that he didn't have any trade protection. Vegas could trade him to wherever they wanted to. But then when Vegas tried to trade him to Anaheim, it found out that he did have trade protection in his list. So it sounds like there might be some sort of punishment coming for Ottawa for not relaying the Dadonov trade information to Vegas that sort of halted the Vegas-Anaheim trade. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I've seen a couple of different sources say maybe they're going to lose a first-round pick for this. I think that will be a really big sort of egregious penalty for what happened with the Dadonov situation. It was a bad situation, but I'm not sure if it's egregious enough to cost them a first-round pick. And Jeff Merrick on the 32 Thoughts podcast did make a really interesting point, saying that Michael Andlauer's new owner, the NHL doesn't really want a new owner to be sort of strapped with a huge penalty like this. So maybe, given the fact that Sens have new ownership, it sort of softens the blow a little bit, which I think is a possibility. So it'll be interesting to see if that's sort of what happens. But it does sort of sound like, because of the Dadonov situation, Ottawa not relaying the information that Dadonov did have trade protection, it does sound like there is going to be some sort of punishment. I wouldn't expect it to be a first-round pick. That's a pretty severe punishment. But I'm not exactly sure if it'll be a fine or a draft pick of some other sorts, maybe like a second or third-round pick. Not exactly sure what the punishment will be, but it does sound like Ottawa will be getting a punishment in some sorts, and Vegas will be abolished from all sort of wrongdoings of that situation. Just given the fact that Vegas really didn't do anything wrong in that situation. They truly thought that Dadonov did not have any trade protection when they were trading him to Anaheim, and he did. So it sounds like Ottawa's going to be punished at some point this week by the NHL for that situation with Dadonov. I'll be interested to see what sort of punishment Ottawa gets by the NHL for not relaying the information of Dadonov's trade status to Vegas when they traded him, and that led to the Vegas and Anaheim trade that wound up not happening. So it's going to be interesting to see, but that's sort of the big news from around the NHL right now that Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick touched on yesterday. It sounds like it will happen. Not exactly sure if it'll be a first-round pick, but it'll be really interesting to see what the punishment is later in the week for the Ottawa Senators. And lastly here, I want to touch on a couple of trade rumors from around the NHL. There's definitely been a couple of really big trade rumors over the past little while. So first, the Florida Panthers, not so much of trade rumors as they are signing rumors, but Kevin Weeks put out a tweet saying that the Florida Panthers are currently trying to re-sign two really good top four defensemen before they were able to hit unrestricted free agency, and that was D-Men Montour and Forsling. Forsling's had a pretty good start to the season, basically being the team's number one defenseman right now on the Panthers blue line. Montour, who had a breakout season last year, has been really good, currently injured right now, is also a very good player. So I would expect both these guys to definitely try and get signed by the Florida Panthers. Panthers defense looks really bleak if those two guys aren't in the lineup. So I would definitely expect the Panthers to try and sign them. Will they sign them? That's still yet to see. But I definitely do think that the Panthers will try and sign them. Forsling's currently making, I think, $4 million. Montour's making $3.5 million. Forsling's a little bit younger than Montour, but Montour's had better seasons than Forsling. So I could see Forsling get maybe like a 3 to 4 year deal at around like $5.5 million, a little bit of a pay bump, not too much, but I think that's sort of the range that I think Forsling should be signing for. Montour, I could definitely see with his offensive prowess, maybe get like a 4 to 6 year deal at around like $6 million, maybe just a tad bit above. That would be my guess for a Brandon Montour extension, but definitely, I think both these guys have been really big pieces of the Florida Panthers blue line. If both walk for free agency, that leaves a major hole in the Florida Panthers blue line. So hopefully the Panthers are going to be able to sign these two. It sounds like, according to Kevin Weeks, the Panthers are trying to sign these two guys, so it'll be interesting to see. I would not be overly shocked if Montour and Forsling were being discussed for contract negotiations right now with the Florida Panthers, and if they do wind up signing them in the not-too-distant future. But it'll be interesting to see. But according to Kevin Weeks, it sounds like Montour and Forsling and trying to make sure they extend so you don't lose them via free agency in the offseason. So it'll be interesting to see if they wind up getting signed. According to Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast, there seems to be a lot of concern right now about the Calgary Flames. He did say that a couple of weeks ago, Hanifin was being close to signing an extension with the Flames, even though it sounded like it wasn't going to happen in the offseason. It sounds like there was a lot of good progress, and eventually a Hanifin signing would happen. But now it's sort of like a wait-and-see process. Maybe not the terms of the contract are the problem, but instead the Flames start. The Flames had a horrible start at 2-6-1. I think they're on like a 5-game losing streak. They've not had a fantastic start to the season, and I think that's given some of the UFAs that the Flames have pause for re-signing, because if the Flames aren't going to do really well this year, there's a very likely chance that players like Hanifin, like Lindholm, like some of these other players who are printing UFAs, like Tanev, like Zadorov, they may not want to come back if the Flames don't look overly well this year. So Flames now are overly good start. Friedman said that maybe Hanifin's sort of saying, hold on, wait a minute, we'll see how the season plays out a little bit more before signing an extension, but it doesn't sound like Hanifin really is going to be signing an extension anytime soon. Maybe it will happen later in the season. I'm not definitely ruling out the fact that maybe Hanifin does wind up getting signed at one point, but with the Flames start to the season, it seems more likely like it'll probably wait until later on in the season. The Flames will probably need to turn it around and definitely start playing a little bit more better before Hanifin commits to an extension. I'll be also interested to see, does Lindholm commit to an extension? Lindholm is their top line center. If they're not doing overly well, it could be a really big trade piece at the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see, but the Flames now had a really good start, as we said, 2-6-1 to start the season. They've looked really awful over their first 9 games in the season, and they don't look overly well. So if that's really the case, maybe Hanifin doesn't sign, maybe Lindholm doesn't sign, and if they're not doing overly well and they're not able to right the ship, maybe those guys are trade pieces at the deadline. I think it's quite possible. I've also seen some people link Chris Tanev to Vancouver. Maybe that's a possible trade piece at the trade deadline. Like I said, they did sign Backlund. They traded to Foley in the offseason. Those were 2 of their bigger UFAs as well, but they still have Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, and Zadorov as big potential UFAs who they will still need to move. So it'll be interesting to see, but the Flames have not done overly well this year, and that might sort of hold up a Hanifin signing until the Flames start to play better and Hanifin's more confident in signing there long term, because I don't think he wants to sign there long term if the Flames are not making the playoffs and being contenders for the Stanley Cup. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, but it sort of sounds like Hanifin may not want to resign at this point in time, and maybe guys like Hanifin and Lindholm, instead of resigning, wind up being trade deadline acquisitions. That's quite possible. And lastly here, this isn't a rumor, just something I'm going to throw out there, and that is that is Frank Vatrano going to be a possible trade candidate this trade deadline? Now, the Ducks are doing really well. They're 5-4-0 right now. They have a really good start to the season on a 4-game winning streak. I don't expect them to keep up this pace, but they're definitely showing that they're having a really, really good resurgence this year. But I expect the Ducks to continue to probably be like a bottom 10 team. I expect them to continue to be a team who is looking for draft capital, probably move some pieces at the deadline this year. And one of the guys I'm wondering about is Frank Vatrano. Vatrano's had a fantastic start to the season. He's put up 9 goals in 9 games. He's one of the best goal scorers in the NHL right now. He's looked fantastic. So my big thing with Anaheim is, do the Ducks capitalize on this absolutely extreme trade value from Vatrano, and do they try and trade him at the deadline? Now, Vatrano has been a really good middle six forward over the past couple of years. He was really good middle six forward in Florida. He was traded to New York Rangers a couple of years ago at the trade deadline. He did really well with the Rangers in the rest of the regular season and in the playoffs. He had a little bit of a down year with Anaheim last year, but he has 9 goals in 9 games. He's looked fantastic this year. And I think for a team who's looking for a good, speedy middle six forward who could definitely put up some goals in their middle six, I think Vatrano could work really well. I think he's making just over $3 million. I think it was like a $3.175 million cap hit for this year and next year. So if he's not going to re-sign with the Ducks beyond next year, after next year's done, maybe the Ducks try and trade him, use his trade value, get a solid return. He's not a rental. He's going to be a player who could definitely give a team this year plus another cup run. So definitely, I would expect the Ducks to possibly at least consider this. Now, if they're in the playoff hunt, maybe they keep him. But like I said, I expect the Ducks to probably falter a little bit and fall down a little bit and still be one of the lower teams in the NHL and in the Western Conference. So if that happens, maybe they move on from Vatrano at the deadline. I think that's a possibility. I think Vatrano at $3 million with the production he's putting up right now is definitely a really good steal of a deal in my opinion. And I think Vatrano could definitely do really well. I'd love to hear what your guys think down in the comments. Does Vatrano get traded if the Ducks are sellers at the deadline? I think it's a really likely possibility. He's producing really well right now, and I think there will be a ton of teams interested in him. Do the Flames wind up signing Hanifin and possibly Lindholm, or do they have to move them by the deadline? I think if they are able to turn the ship around and maybe play a little bit better, maybe Hanifin does consider resigning again. Maybe Lindholm has a better option of resigning. But if the Flames continue to falter and continue to fall, I think it's extremely likely that those two wind up getting moved at the deadline. I definitely have to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Do the Panthers wind up re-signing Forsling and Montour? I think it's a very likely possibility. Both are really good top four defensemen. Like I said, I think that's my money for Forsling. 2 to 4 years at probably around $5.5 million. Montour 4 to 6 years at around maybe $6.25 million. So definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on those two guys possibly resigning with Florida down in the comments. And then what are your thoughts on everything else we discussed today? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. But that's what we're going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. We are so close to 200 subscribers. Thank you for all of your support. I'd never be able to do all of this without you guys. So definitely don't forget to leave a subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. I'll leave links to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.